I was nervous when we first opened the warehouse.
Yeah.
The patient who was there on the first Monday morning at 8 a.m, I was so humbled. I went out to have a sneak preview of the patients' faces to see what they were taking everything in. And there's an elephant hanging from the roof. There's a giant horse meets you as you come in the door. And I just was wondering, is it all going to be a bit too much?
Yeah, are people going to think we're crazy?
And then I went to speak to a lady and she was crying, and she just, first patient through the door that day, and she was crying, and she just said, with the music and just looking at all the artwork, she said, I just feel I've come home, I've come to the right place. And she said, I don't feel my pain when I'm here.
You know how they say there's a book in everyone? What if there was a business in everyone, even you? If you catch yourself wondering, could I sell this? Or you've dreamt about quitting your day job and doing your own thing, you're in the right place. You're listening to You Could Start a Business Doing That, the podcast for people who want to be their own boss, live a rich life, and set themselves free. With lifestyle entrepreneur Jodie Nevid.
So welcome to today's episode of You Could Start a Business Doing That. Now, if you have ever had a grand vision or you want to launch a business that really makes an impact, then I am super excited for what you are going to learn today. I'm bringing you a guest who I see as a true visionary. She's a Scottish nurse who now calls Adelaide home. She's a graduate of the Disney University. And she's also the founder and the director of the International Spine Centre. Eleanor Clausen, welcome to the show.
Well, hi, Jodie. Hi.
Hi. Thanks so much for coming. I'm so excited to unpack your business because whilst I know a little bit about what you do, there's so much that I really don't know. So this is going to be an interview where I'm truly just digging around and seeing what we can find.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Pleasure. Now, I always love to start by hearing from you in your own words, who you are, what you do, and why it matters.
Sure. Well, my name's Eleanor Clausen, and what I do, sometimes I ask myself that question in the morning because my job is so varied. But I trained originally as a nurse when I was 17, and I've had a long career in nursing. I didn't have a particularly linear career. A lot of different opportunities to manage change in that time through the Scottish Health Service and then across the UK and then into Europe. And what do I do now? Well, I'm the founder and chief executive of the International Spine Centre, and it draws a lot on many of the lessons learned in that career over the years. Why it matters? Well, it matters to me because I think that suffering's a part of life. Sadly for us all, but that's part of the human disposition, isn't it? We never come through life unscathed, and it's ever more topical now living through a pandemic. But our health is so important to us, and there's many people with all sorts of types of pain, and they live with pain, and so it matters to me because I wanted to make a difference to those that do suffer, and that's my sort of deep belief and value set that we can make a difference.
Brilliant. And so with the International Spine Centre, for those that don't know much about that business, can you tell us a little bit about what you do there and how it runs?
Sure. Well, the business is 8 years old now and started in Adelaide, which was a fantastic city to start the business simply because it's probably more affordable than commencing the big vision in some of the larger cities in Australia.
They say if you can get it off the ground in Adelaide, you can get it happening anywhere.
Well, this can well be
it's
true.
It's often a test lab for people that want to build franchises.
Yeah. And so Adelaide's been an exciting place to make it happen. But the International Spine Centre started as a very small brand, and it was called YHY and Associates. And at the time when we looked at the branding and marketing, we thought we could maybe be architects. And I thought, well, that would kind of be cool, but we're not.
Yeah.
And so we rebranded to the International Spine Centre, I think within about a year and a half of founding the company. The vision that I had was around interdisciplinary management of care, because when I looked at the patient journey, it seemed to me to be so fragmented. In fact, I thought it was like a giant pinball machine where patients were the pinballs and they're kind of just battered around the city to different specialists. And the different specialists give you different opinions. And and sometimes they don't even communicate or talk to each other. So the concept of international spine was really grounded in that observation that patients really have quite a difficult journey.
Yeah, they do. Absolutely.
And it's really fragmented.
Yeah.
And maybe that's an observation of just the way that some of the Australian healthcare system works. And International Spine brought together this concept that we could bring lots of different disciplines working together, not as a multidisciplinary way, but actually that the patient comes first.
Yeah.
And all the services that are then developed for the patient are centred around that patient. So all the value is centred in the middle.
Yeah.
And there's central records, and all the doctors and all allied health practitioners all communicate about you. So you're the most important person. It's not a medical practice that has traditionally been founded on perhaps the ego of, or the largest ego of the doctor or the founder or whatever. It's really patient-centric.
Love it. And I think that is a big issue, particularly, I don't know if it is in other countries as well, but that feeling as a patient of being the pinball, the ball in the pinball machine. So it's so important, the work you do. Now, Eleanor, this season is all about getting started in business. So I would love to know, as a nurse from Scotland, what inspired you to take on such a grand and visionary project like the International Spine Centre? And is that the first business that you did?
Look, I've always been a bit of a creative in my nursing career. So as I think I alluded to earlier, I had the opportunity to design many things and a bit of an agitator for change, and maybe advocating, having a voice for patients and questioning, does it always have to be done that way? Can we do a bit better? So much so that sometimes my colleagues would run away from me and see me in the corner and say, "Oh no, Eleanor, what is it?" And I say, "Listen, I've had a bit of an idea. Hey, do you fancy getting together and we could workshop some ideas?" And before we knew it, we developed a whole series of different jobs and roles.
Amazing.
And pushed the boundaries of nursing a bit. And then, the Edinburgh Pain Assessment Tool, which then became a global recognised globally in the management of cancer pain. So small ideas, those tiny little things that you listen to a patient and you thought, I wonder if we could do better.
Yeah.
And then just the ability to get everybody around you, create a team, and before you know it, something that was a small seed has become, the big acorn.
It's amazing.
And so I was creative in my job, and coming to Adelaide, I listened to the patients. In fact, nearly all of the services that I've developed have simply been based on a patient's story. So I've had a chat with a patient, they've told me something, Jodie, and then I've thought, if that person's experiencing that, how many hundreds of other people could be experiencing it the same? So when I look at our intentional design of some of the pathways of care, I can name the patient in my head that had a chat with me, and I thought, oh, that's not right. Could we do something better? And sometimes we've succeeded, and sometimes I think we still fail.
Yeah.
And with humility, when I look at patient complaints and things, I think, oh, how could we get it wrong?
Yeah.
How could we go? How could we not get that right? But I suppose you always have to think that you don't always get things right, and it's better to have tried and failed than maybe not try at all.
Absolutely, and that's really part of the innovation process, isn't it? You've got to have a crack and then go, okay, at least we're putting our best foot forward.
Yeah.
And I love that, Eleanor, because essentially this show, the reason why we've called the whole podcast You Could Start a Business Doing That, is because the world's full of opportunities, and your thinking around how could we do it better is really, anyone who wants to start a business can look out to any kind of industry or any kind of service and say, well, how could we do that better? You could start a business doing that. And that's essentially exactly what you've done,
right.
which is brilliant. I love it.
Quite often, commercially we'll talk about what are the pain points for a customer. And therefore you can absolutely look at anything and think, well, there's going to be some sort of pain in it. It might not be visceral pain in your body, but it could be psychological pain or bureaucratic pain. And I think negotiating health services, and when you're a patient, it's a hard journey to negotiate bureaucracy alone. I think that's painful.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't even go there. It's just a nightmare. So, Eleanor, with the vision for the International Spine Centre, and I know there's a development of a building there that's very grand, Was it always a grand vision from the beginning, or is it a vision that's evolved?
Sure. Look, Jodie, I started the business on an extension of a credit card because the bank manager questioned me why I was so corporate.
Yeah.
And, there was quite a lot of sexism at that time.
Yeah.
And I said to him at the time, look, I don't hear horses and carriages in the street.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me why, I really want to have a business.
Yeah.
And so it was the most terrifying thing. And then a lease came up and I got this tiny little place that had no natural light, and the interior.
Was it here in Adelaide?
Yeah, and the interior was really depressing. And so I turned that around on the extension of the credit card. And then within a year, we'd outgrown that space, took 250 square metres. And within 3 years, had outgrown that space, put in an Olympic gym, and the business began to develop. So there was evolution with it, but at the heart of it was still the concept that there was suffering, patient suffering. Did we walk past symptoms? Yes, we kind of did. Patients had problems with their bladder, and then I thought that's something we should be concentrating on. It's not just about back pain, and people have lots of other symptoms, and what you walk past you accept. So then the services began to develop around the interdisciplinary model. And then before long, we'd outgrown that. We had a very contemporary interior, and the patients loved this funkiness about the brand.
Funky, yeah.
And then the opportunity to take a warehouse in Norwood came up, and so that was 500 square metres, and that's when I really began to think I'm going to create an art gallery, and care's just going to happen in the art gallery. And that was sort of based on the premise that environment really matters, and you need distraction when you're sore, and it just lifts the spirits. And so we've had a bit of fun in designing the warehouse and, some of the art and sculpture within it. The neon sign, the hello zone, the goodbye zone. We've been really intentionally, I guess, designing the patient journey.
And it is a journey through your building. It's very cool.
Yeah. And that's with the view to, a bigger building that we're developing in the CBD of Adelaide called the Carrington Collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so before we talk about the Carrington Collaborative, because I really want to unpack that picture for our viewers, I want to talk about your launch, because I remember arriving at the launch of your warehouse, International Spine Centre. We got out of our cab and we were greeted by Minnie and Mickey Mouse, who were right there. And at your launch party, you shared with us a bit about your time, and she's got the ears on now, which is brilliant, at the Disney Institute. So talk us through what that was like, Eleanor, because this is magic.
Well, the thing that's really interesting about healthcare is that, I think if you couldn't sleep at night, you should read lots of stuff on healthcare. That sounds really negative, but true.
It'll put you to sleep.
It will. And so I in my career, I was really looking for some focus on patients, but I didn't want it to really have that whole patient thing. Started thinking about customers, the patient as customer. And in my thinking then led me to the door of Disney, the Disney Institute, Disney University. And I then started a dialogue with an Imagineer, and I just thought they had the coolest name anyway as a job. Imagine imagining for your job. And I thought, well, kind of as business leaders, we do imagine. Yeah. We imagine what it can be like, to be better for somebody else, your customer. And through that dialogue over time, I then learned that Disney had turned around a failing hospital in the States. And it was all based on culture. And what happened was that a shiny new institution had opened down the road, and this old crumbling building was just not getting the patients through, and the new shiny hospital was. But Disney went in, and their management consultants went in, and they really worked on the culture of the front staff desk and how you were received, and the nursing staff, and just all of those things that we consider softer skills, but actually make you feel
the experiential stuff.
Yeah.
It's like I'm experiencing
That's
something.
right. So when you first walk in, you know, what is that greeting like and everything else? Anyway, they just had fantastic figures for turning that health institution around. And then before long, within a year, actually the patients were all wanting to go to the crumbly old site versus the new shiny building.
And in turning it around, did it still be a crumbly old site with just a nice culture, or did they zhuzh it up a bit?
They didn't zhuzh it up a bit. They spent
really?
the money on culture. And
Wow.
I found that really fascinating.
Amazing.
Because sometimes, we all think if we go into a building that just looks amazing, we're going to get the best care.
Yeah.
Might not necessarily translate as that. So I flew over to Disney, and they were opening the park in Florida for the very first time to the public behind the scenes. So the Disney Institute course allowed us to look at their intentional design and all of that magic that goes in behind your customer experience, and how you're made to feel, how are you made to feel at Disney? You're the most important person in the world, and Mickey wants you to feel that way. This concept of magic moments. So for me, I really was just absorbing all of this in. I started thinking about magic moments for patients and what could we do at International Spine that could be a magic moment for a patient. Now, we don't entertain patients.
Yeah.
There was some criticism for me as a chief executive that, what are you doing, Eleanor? That's a theme park. That's entertainment. We're serious. We're doctors. We're healthcare. But, sometimes when you're in a lot of pain, you just need to be lifted a little bit.
Yeah. And lightened, laughter and a bit of less seriousness can really take our
That's
pain
right.
away.
And not to be done in a crass way.
Yeah.
But at Disney, I really was thinking a lot about those things, and also about Walt Disney himself, who wrote all these letters, and those letters are what still run Disney now. He wrote to everybody who worked for him, and you can see the letters when you go, and it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And his vision, there you go. He's going to turn a swamp into a theme park, and there wasn't a bank would lend him any money.
Yeah, that's right.
So there you go. The visionary piece around
Yeah.
around sticking in there. Everybody laughed at Walt Disney.
Yeah, he got rejected
That's
hundreds of times.
People told
before.
me there's no business for you in Adelaide.
Really?
There's no business for you here.
Yeah.
Or trying to get money from the bank. Remember that seminal question. Why on earth do you want to start a business?
Yeah.
And it was done not in a positive way.
Yeah.
So you've got to have tenacity as the visionary, I think.
Yeah.
But Disney, then I did an interview for them about the concept of applying the tenets of the Disney philosophy to healthcare.
Yeah.
And then I brought that back with me, Jodie, and that's when I just started to introduce so much more fun into what we do, and energising the team with a little bit of fun as well.
And have your patients been receptive to your approach?
Yeah,
in that way?
I was nervous when we first opened the warehouse.
Yeah.
The patient who was there on the first Monday morning at 8 a.m, I was so humbled. I went out to have a sneak preview of the patients' faces to see what they were taking everything in. And there's an elephant hanging from the roof. There's a giant horse meets you as you come in the door. And I just was wondering, is it all going to be a bit too much?
Yeah,
But,
are people going to think we're crazy?
And then I went to speak to a lady, and she was crying, and she just, first patient through the door that day, and she was crying, and she just said, with the music and just looking at all the artwork, she said, I just feel I've come home. I've come to the right place. And she said, I don't feel my pain when I'm here. There's just so many things to look at. And, I think
that's the best
there's a
feedback
paper.
you can get.
There's a paper in there, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. And what a comment. I don't feel my pain when I come here.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly where you were aiming. Well, exactly what you were aiming for.
That's right. And so people often say, have I come to the right place? They don't feel like they're in a medical practice.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's experimental, Jodie, and I'm really glad we've done it. And the horse was in his horse box for a couple of years whilst we waited on the premises. But that's what we've done over there. And I think the patients, the feedback is really, it's been really positive.
Yeah. And these magical moments, I know from the warehouse to the ultimate space of the International Spine Centre are going to continue to grow. So tell us about the even grander vision than what you've already created.
Well, look, I saw a building and it looked pretty horrible, but I didn't see the building as it was. I saw it how it could be, and I was pretty mesmerised with it being near parkland, and I thought we could wrap that beautiful nature and outdoor space round into the building. It took me nearly 2.5 years to get that through. I elevated the project eventually to state government and to the government architects. I was finding difficulty getting traction with my vision to have a integrated health centre, in a modernist design and quite a radical building in Adelaide. But the government architects who flew in at that time, they were just so encouraging with the vision, and they worked with the architectural practice that I was working with, and they were really, really excited. And they just said, wow, this is just really important for Australia, Eleanor. This is important, globally, what you're doing in Adelaide.
It's landmark stuff,
And so we had, designed the building with a big spiral staircase, and we've been really thinking about transitional space and how we can have natural conversations about healthcare. And so we got development approval for that, and it went to tender. And the same day that the COVID announcements were made last March was the day that we'd gone to tender on 6 floors.
Yeah, wow.
So
So this is in the heart of Adelaide City. It's a really contemporary 6-story building.
Yeah, and modernist architecture.
Yeah.
And that vision for that building really came from seeing Corbusier's work in Paris at the Villa Savoy, and I loved the spiral staircase in that, and I saw that maybe 25 years ago. So my brief to the architect when I met him, I think he thought I was crazy, but I said, look, I saw a staircase 25 years ago and I knew I wanted one.
Wow.
And I want it in this building. And he was just like, Eleanor, you're a dream client. Well, obviously wanting a spiral staircase in a modernist building. So that's really, really exciting. And we've just relaunched that project. We've just been finishing some of the floor plans for that. So raising capital again, but the banks have got a very different attitude this time around, Jodie.
And so with the spiral staircase, I'm trying to get a picture in my mind. Does that go all the way up, or is that just the first couple of floors?
I think it's ground to 3.
Wow, a 3-story spiral staircase. Amazing. Yeah. And so where does that project sit now? Because you've obviously in a changing environment. Is it something you still believe that can go ahead?
Yeah, I truly believe we should go ahead with it. I mean, I've been sort of going back and forward on this, feel the fear and do it anyway. And sometimes, deep down within your own heart, you examine your intention. Yeah. And my intention hadn't changed. At the time, some of the real estate people were saying, look, Eleanor, just fill it with 1-bed apartments or something.
Just do something easy.
And then I thought, I've gone this far. We put a lot of capital into the design. And then I thought, if I walk away from that vision now, I've just diluted, what the dream was. Yeah. And I'm not going to achieve that in my lifetime to build this building. So I've felt the fear, Jodie, and we've just been signing off on the design. So the existing building will be demolished, I think, towards the end of this year, beginning next, and it'll be a 2.5 year build.
Wow.
And I'm really excited, excited. And my vision remains as it was on day one. But I've then, been thinking a lot about health and about just some of the judgments sometimes we have within medicine about other healthcare delivery systems, and perhaps we ought to be a little bit more open to that. Yeah. Whilst we've had, a lot of psychology, integrated psychiatry in what we do, I've felt a lot about yoga and why shouldn't we have that all endorsed, within one building, and whatever makes you feel good should be in there.
Amazing.
And just be the best version of yourself.
How amazing. And, I love that. One of my visions is to create a life design centre, the South Australian Life Design Centre, and in that to have something like a longevity lab, which really looks at best practice for staying young naturally by staying healthy and maintaining your health. So I'm very excited by your vision, Eleanor.
Yeah.
Now, I'd love to know, because you came along to the Brain Body Business Retreat. It was so cool to have you there. And I remember at the retreat, you talked a little bit about a pivotal moment for you in business when one of your coaches challenged you with a pretty powerful question about money. Yeah. Do you mind sharing about that? Because I think a lot of people get stuck in business around the money topic, and I'm big on making money in business. Yeah. Look,
having worked in the National Health Service for a very, very long period of time, I can remember being super excited when the reps used to come in and we got sticky pads, like Post-it notes for free. And I remember just thinking, oh, that's great, So there was always this sort of feeling that, when you're called into nursing, and I do think it's a calling, that, money was a dirty thing.
Yeah.
You're never in it for money.
Yep.
But then suddenly coming to Australia, you've launched a business, you're a commercial entity. And I sought a business coach, a commercial coach that was going to give me a really hard time, really put me through my paces. And so about 5 years into the business, we're just looking at the financials. And, in fairness, being really self-critical, I'd kind of built a Ferrari. It looked really good on the outside.
Yeah.
Some of the engine was missing. I didn't have enough capacity to drive the Ferrari.
Yeah. Yep.
That's not to say the patients weren't getting the care.
But I think people can understand what that's like. You build a business that looks great on the inside, but sometimes some of the spark plugs are not quite firing where they should be from a commercial perspective.
That's right. And and it was a big, obviously a big learning for me. So I was looking at profit margins, and, we were cutting even, but not making a profit. I hadn't started taking a salary out of the business. I was just doing it for the love of it.
Yeah.
And so he said to me, "Look, Eleanor, you have to be really serious and tell me, do you want a not-for-profit?
Yeah.
Or do you want to make profit?"
Yeah.
Jodie, I was so offended at the time. But, that's the good thing about coaching, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really pushing out of your comfort zone. And I thought, a not-for-profit, no, this is a business, and whatever.
How dare you?
Yeah, and so he had a spark in his eye and a little tinkle, and he just looked at me and he was just like, "Eleanor, I'm going to ask you the question again. Are you really serious about this business?
Yeah.
Is this a not-for-profit?" Because he said, if you want a not-for-profit, that's exactly what we'll do.
Yep.
And he'd been on lots of not-for-profit boards. He's an amazing man. Donald McGurk from Codan,
Yeah.
brilliant, absolutely brilliant business mind. And so and my team were silent, but afterwards we were all laughing,
Yeah.
And so we talk about this all the time. Well, my goodness, did I then, after that challenge, work on that profit margin? Because I then thought, on the next review that Donald comes into the business and has a look at, I want to prove that this is a serious business and whatever. And so whilst we haven't been incredibly profitable yet, but we're building the business, and it's certainly all the financials are going in the right direction. And, you don't want to exploit people for money in healthcare.
No.
That's not what it's about.
No.
And, I know that it's been terribly critical, in Australian culture, because you think, well, does that surgeon drive the Ferrari, or what sort of car do they drive and everything else? And that's not really been what we've been about. Yeah. But, we have to make a good living from the amount of effort.
Yeah.
14-hour days were nothing to me to work. And I've worked really hard for the business. So I'm really glad that 3 years ago I started on the minimum wage, and then we've been working up. Yeah. And now I feel much better about myself, because I thought I must be the cheapest chief executive. And now I'm building this big building, and I've got to be serious about, well, what about my life?
Yeah. Absolutely.
And business comes from sacrifice.
It does. And I think that it's an interesting thing. A lot of people have a strange relationship with money because somehow it's attached to greed or evil or whatever it might be. But when we actually realise that the more profitable our business is, the stronger it can scale and the more it can serve.
Yeah.
If you stayed not making a profit, then the vision for the International Spine Centre, the ultimate grand building, will never be.
So I had no capacity for growth or scaling, but now we do.
Yeah,
which is beautiful. That's fantastic, and it just really reset my mind onto just being far more critical of our overheads and where the money was going, what our cash flow was like. It just really, just some it might be called business basics, and I think maybe that's the lesson in our conversation. Yeah. It's just about, you can be the visionary, and you can know where you're going, be really strategic in the vision, execution of that vision, but you have to be able to do the everyday business as well. Yes. There's a tension there in being a visionary with ideas that you don't get carried away without actually really making sure that the engine is sound.
Yes. The Ferrari with an engine that doesn't fire. No good.
Doesn't leave the garage. Yeah. You're not going to get anywhere.
Absolutely. And so in all of your experience in building business, obviously behind the vision, you must have the mechanics. So bringing a grand vision to life is not only lots of hours, 14-hour days, as you said before, but it's the mental energy because it can eat you alive. How have you managed that for yourself?
Well, I think, looking backwards on the last 8 years, there are times when I don't feel I've managed it particularly well, and I can see when I'm running on empty.
Yeah.
And when you run on empty, you don't do your best work because you don't have that creation about you. You just are a bit exhausted.
Yeah.
So the mental energy really is so important to be able to continue to create and have your ideas and then execute, because it's the execution of ideas that allow us to become successful, isn't it? It's not just
Absolutely.
having the idea, but that takes so much mental energy and physical energy to keep going, and troubleshooting areas of the business that perhaps aren't going as well as you want them to. And I just wasn't very good at managing that, for a while, and I recognised it within myself, and I felt I just got a little bit lost. Maybe my path, I just got a little bit lost, and so I didn't feel physically that well, and
which is ironic because you're in the healthcare
space. That's right, but you're so busy looking after everybody else, and you're up to a team of 40 or something. There's just so many people all want a little bit of you.
That's right.
And so I really wanted to carve out some me time, but then I felt really bad about that and a bit guilty and maybe self-indulgent. And then it struck me that as the leader of the organisation, if I didn't carve out time for me and concentrate on me, I wasn't going to be able to lead others. Yeah. And so that's when, I think we had that conversation in the boardroom a way back, Jodie, and I said, I'd love to do a retreat. I think it would be really good for me. And so it was exceptionally good for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know, and you inspire me actually, and we have similar values around going off and doing mini breaks with our partners, and that's something that you and YH do regularly. Tell us a little bit about what that's like.
So that's been really good. I think when you look at your year and you can plan your year to be able to be really disciplined in actually choosing to take a weekend, a month away, and that's been really important, hasn't it? With COVID, that we just re-energize psychologically and spend time away from our everyday lives. And so at the beginning of the year, that's what I did. I just committed in my annual goals to 1 weekend a month, and it's just been fantastic. Sometimes we have some friends with us, sometimes we're just on our own. But I've really loved that, and the introduction of yoga, and I've been training a lot in the gym and back doing weights, and I've lost some weight, and in actual fact I feel like the flow of my work and where I'm at mentally is stronger, and I've got my sense of humour back.
It makes a difference when you feel good in your own body. And, I love learning from you. All right, where have you tried, Eleanor? Where have you stayed lately? And you often see the places Jace and I go on Facebook as well.
It's
gorgeous. And we're always swapping notes. It's great.
Yeah.
Be a tourist in your own city.
That's right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Brilliant. For anyone out there who's listening, before we go to our rapid fire questions, I'd love to know just your top 3 steps to bringing a grand vision to life. What would you say?
Sure.
3 things someone has to do if they've got a grand vision and they want it to become a reality.
Right. Okay. So, Jodie, don't dilute your vision.
Yeah.
Always think big. Articulate it. You have to know how to communicate that vision.
So important.
For others to believe in it, and you have to believe in yourself. So I've given you maybe 5 there.
Yeah. Well, that's 3. Don't dilute the vision. Learn how to articulate the vision so others can get on board with it. And then believe in yourself. I love it. Thank you, Eleanor. Now, are you ready for our 7 rapid fire questions?
Here we go.
Rules are, first thing that comes to mind, and don't overthink it. They're fun. They're easy. Take a deep breath. Let's do it. Eleanor, what's your favourite movie of all time?
Wizard of Oz.
Oh, me too. Oh, my God. That's the same. Snap. What did you want to be when you grew up?
A nurse.
Oh, and you did it. That's so cool. What's a book you always recommend to people and why?
Yeah, well, I would say Carnegie's book on influence.
How to Win Friends and Influence People, Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
Good one. Old school.
Yeah.
What skills do you think we need to get better at teaching kids?
I just think loving others.
Nice. Loving. What are you learning right now, personally or professionally?
To take more care of myself.
Ah, nice. And can you tell us a little bit about how you're doing that?
Well, going to the retreat with the Seven Effect was a good start.
Thank you for the plug there.
That
Want
was
to take more care?
well, just really integrating, designing your life. That's what I'm learning at the moment.
Yeah.
And I'm very, very grateful for that because, when you're building a big business and you've got multiple other brands coming on in the next year, a couple of other businesses I'm starting as well, it would be so easy, just to get lost in that again. And I don't want to, because Jodie taught me the 7 elements, and that's what I'm concentrating on.
I love it. That's beautiful. All right. What's the best thing about being in business for you, Eleanor?
I don't find it exhausting. I actually find it really energizing.
It keeps you alive and ticking. Yeah. And if I gave you, I think I know what the answer to this might be, but let's see what comes up. If I gave you $100 million cash to build any business you wanted, what would you build?
I'd just build what I'm building now, but across the world.
Oh, wow. So one in different cities.
Yeah.
How fantastic. Eleanor, thank you so much for being a guest on today's podcast. You've been amazing. I love the ears. If anyone wants to reach out to you and come along to the International Spine Centre or hear more about your future projects, what's the best way to get in touch?
Just drop an email or come onto the website and say hi.
Brilliant. We'll put the website link below.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
The number one reason people go into business is to break free, but instead they often burn out. That's why we created Freedom Fest, the 3-day planning retreat that gives you a 12-month planning system for life and business that will set you free. Trade meetings for moments, stress for sunsets, and long hours for Long Island iced teas. Get your tickets at freedomfest.com.au.